Hello, and thank you for taking the time to join me today. My name is Cassi-Dee Muller, and I am a registered AASW social worker, and I'm currently working towards my mental health accreditation. My mission is to provide accessible mental health support to the Agnes Water and surrounding communities. My background involves specialised work within the disability sector, including support work, employment coaching, and group facilitation that is individualised to neurodiverse, intellectual, and physical needs. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible commitment that homeschooling families make. Homeschooling involves far more than just education. Parents support learning, emotional development, problem solving, and family life all at the same time. The purpose of this webinar is to explore the homeschooling journey and experience, as well as to share practical skills that can support both parents and children to thrive while homeschooling. This webinar is not about telling families or parents how they should homeschool. Everyone has different needs and wants. Instead, today is about supporting well-being so that homeschooling remains sustainable and positive for the family as a whole. So, what will be covered today? Today, we will discuss and explore the homeschooling journey and experiences among Australians, including the strengths and difficulties which commonly occur. And as we go through this first section, I would be interested in knowing more about your experiences. I invite you to comment below in the chat box. What has homeschooling been like for you and your family? For instance, did you have expectations going into it that were or were not met? Did you learn something new about yourself? What did you find difficult about homeschooling? I'd be really interested to know more about what you experienced as we look at the common experiences among Australians. Then we will move into parental well-being in the homeschooling environment, which is also important to recognise on its own. As much as the time it's focused on the child, when you as the parental educator is carrying most of that load. Accordingly, strategies to reduce the risk of parental burnout will also be identified. We will then unpack children's emotional development to gain insight into how homeschooling can impact your child, acknowledging both the positive outcomes and the challenges. Additionally, we will explore strategies to moderate those potential challenges which may arise. We will also explore ways of supporting your child as they continue or begin to engage with homeschooling by suggesting 3 core strategies to help increase capacity for emotional regulation and awareness. And these 3 core strategies can also be used by you as a parent as well. So homeschooling families often describe their journey as deeply rewarding, but also as incredibly complex and challenging. Beyond this, homeschooling serves a deeper purpose: to create a learning environment that better suits the child's or family's needs, whether that is due to physical, intellectual, or neurodiversity modifications, perhaps a lack of access to attend a general or mainstream school, or just preference. Research on home education in Australia identified that Families often choose homeschooling because they want personalized learning, flexibility, environments that support children's well-being, an opportunity to follow a child's interest and pace. So there's lots of varying factors that goes into this decision. It could be one of these factors, a mix of these factors, or even something else. So for many families, homeschooling is a thoughtful and intentional decision. Research on parent experiences consistently highlights several strengths of homeschooling. Many families reported strong parent-child relationships, opportunities for that interest-led learning, flexibility in routines and scheduling, the ability to adapt to children's individual learning styles. And at the same time, homeschooling can place a lot of responsibility on parents by often needing them to manage a heavy workload, which includes, but is not limited to, teaching and educating, the general household responsibilities, supporting the child's engagement and focus in the work, and also behavioral management. Additional research on family well-being highlights that when parents carry multiple roles simultaneously, it can lead to emotional fatigue, social isolation, chronic stress, or emotional sensitivity and dysregulation over time. This doesn't mean that homeschooling is a problem. It simply demonstrates that support and well-being strategies can make a really big difference. As briefly identified earlier, homeschooling can place a heavy load onto parents. This increases the risk of experiencing burnout and a decrease in overall well-being. An essential finding within family psychology is that parental emotional well-being strongly influences children's well-being. When you as the parent is able to regulate stress and emotions effectively, children will be more likely to develop those same skills. And this is because the way adults respond to emotions in the environment shapes how children learn to manage their own emotions. This influence is actually strengthened due to the attachment between child and parent. In other words, when parents look after their own well-being, they are simultaneously supporting their child's emotional development. And in addition to the workload and responsibilities, many homeschooling parents report experiencing pressures such as feeling responsible for their child's educational progress, managing behavior and emotional needs, trying to create meaningful learning experiences, and even comparing themselves with other families. And it's very easy for parents to place extremely high expectations upon themselves. But learning and development doesn't happen through perfection. It happens through relationship, exploration, and emotional safety. So before we explore the strategies to reduce burnout, I would like to invite you to reflect on yourself and if you are either at risk of or currently experiencing burnout. I will move through this activity slowly to allow you some time to think and reflect. If you're watching the recorded version of this webinar, feel free to pause to allow yourself the time you need for this activity. So ask yourself, am I feeling physically and emotionally drained? So this might look like running on empty, being unable to recover after sleep. So waking up still exhausted from the day or week prior. What has changed for you on a physical and emotional level when it comes to your energy, and perhaps even when it comes to your tolerance? And think to yourself, am I distancing myself from my child, children, or partner to manage my energy levels? This can involve going through the motions of care, such as driving to appointments, being on autopilot during routines, so not being fully present and emotionally available. What does that look like for you? And has anything changed in that domain of your parenting and of your life? And think to yourself, am I feeling fed up, overwhelmed, and no longer enjoying my time parenting? This could also be a feeling of even failure as a parent or a sense of helplessness. What does that look like for you? Is that something you've ever experienced or are currently experiencing in the here and now? Perhaps, am I feeling quicker to anger or irritability than usual? A significant increase in frustration or yelling can also be a sign that you are experiencing burnout. However, it doesn't always need to look like yelling, swearing, or outbursts. It can also look like crying, getting emotional, being more sensitive to things that may not have impacted you previously. This can look different to different people. So think to yourself, how does your anger or irritability present itself? And how has that been impacting on you? And what has that looked like? How has it changed? Has it changed at all? And ask yourself, am I withdrawing or isolating myself? This could look like reducing contact with family or friends. It can even look like doom scrolling, so watching reels for hours to self-soothe and to get that bit of entertainment, the dopamine that your brain needs because it's on overdrive. What does that look like for you? Has that been a way that you've been coping? So as you move through these questions, it's important to note that these are all warning signs that you are being significantly impacted in some way, whether that is stress, anxiety, fatigue, something else, or a mix of many. And if you're not experiencing these things, that's great. And I encourage you to check in with yourself around these signs to continue to reduce the likelihood of burnout. And if these are things that you're experiencing, it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong or that something within you is broken or not working correctly. It is a way that your body and mind is sending a message of wanting or needing support and or some change. So, what can you do to reduce the risk of experiencing burnout? You can acknowledge your circles of control, influence, and concern. So this looks like asking yourself if you have control or influence over the situation, environment, yourself, or your child. So that might look like words of encouragement or affirmation, making modifications or changes to the approach, changes to the learning environment, taking a moment to regulate yourself before re-entering the interaction that's occurring. However, if you identify that you do not have control or influence, you can still hold some concern and consequently accept the circumstances and move forward. It's important to put your energy to things that you can control or you can influence, and then to move forward with acceptance of those things you can only hold concern over. Then you can reframe and challenge negative thoughts. So apply a positive lens when possible. For instance, rather than thinking, this is impossible, I'm a terrible parent, you could reframe it to, yeah, this is difficult, and I am learning how to overcome it. You're not saying that it isn't hard. You're not changing the difficulty that's being experienced. But rather than speaking in an absolute of, I am a failure and this is impossible, you're reframing it to be more positive, while still holding space for the truth and the objective reality for you that it is difficult. And you can also ask yourself objectively, what evidence is there that this is or for and against this thought? So what evidence is for this thought? What evidence is against this thought? And looking at it objectively. So rather than using the emotion mind to say, I feel, no, it is or it is not. So you might find that the negative thoughts that do arise are fueled by your emotion mind rather than your rational mind. Then you can also hold space for your own learning and capacity for change. So acknowledge within yourself that you are also absorbing new information and experiences alongside your child. And you will not always get it right the first time, or maybe even the second time, but it's always a learning experience. And that is your capacity. Or maybe things just, there isn't capacity for change right now. And that's okay too. It's not a reflection on who you are as a person or as a parent. And as you learn and you grow, things might change. Whether that is the approach to learning, the routines, or communication styles that you have with your children, or even the communication that you have with yourself. And the final thing I've listed here is to foster your own connections beyond homeschooling. So whether that is having a connection with the nature, with friends, sport or movement, going to clubs like an art club, having a routine date night with your partner or even with yourself. And, because that fosters your own individual emotional and social health beyond the home. So having a space that is entirely just yours, where you want to go, where you can be with other people and have that time to develop and to fill your cup with for your emotional and social needs. So we'll move to the child's experience now. And so the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare actually highlighted that approximately 1 in 10 children aged 4 to 11 experiences heightened distress. And this prevalence increases during adolescence, thereby reinforcing the importance of that early support. And so for the homeschooling experience, it often involves positive outcomes as well as challenges. So positive outcomes include reduced stress for some children. So can come from the familiar environment where they feel safe and secure at home or in their little community. There are stronger family connections. So as identified earlier, more time with parents and in some instances, siblings. The flexible or individualized learning is a really positive outcome, as there can be different approaches to the education model that is being utilized. And then individual needs of the child are met. This looks like increased modifications, capacity for choice and control within the learning environment. However, it does also come with challenges. So reduced peer interactions, which can impact on resilience levels in children, as there is a reduction in natural conflict, as well as less opportunities to formulate new relationships. There can be difficulty in maintaining routine. So a decrease in that structure and predictability, which can increase uncertainty. Then we also have learning motivation difficulties. So as I said, that lack of structure can also be a big contributor in this challenge. However, children are still developing the skills needed to understand and manage their emotions, as emotional skills develop gradually over childhood and adolescence, then are refined throughout adulthood. And research published on children's mental health highlights the importance of skills such as recognizing and identifying different emotions, managing frustration, building resilience, problem solving, communication, and social skills. And different children have various capacity within learning and developing such skills. However, it is essential that they are given the space to discover what they are capable of. Children learn these skills through practice and guidance, not instantly. And homeschooling environments often provide excellent opportunities for children to grow in these skills through everyday experiences. However, those challenges might still arise, and there are ways to moderate the challenges identified while supporting the development of those important skills as well. So you can support healthy engagement with peers. So this might look like in person, via phone calls, supervised gaming, homeschooling groups, or something else, whatever works for your family. And so within these, they are varying forms of social interactions, which can still be modified to fit the child's individual needs, providing additional capacity to build that resilience, to problem solve, and to communicate with others while fostering connection. You can also create a predictable routine that works for you. This might look like waking up at a particular time, having set times for learning, play, rest, and an arrangement for dinner time, time to unwind, and bedtime. This increases the predictability around learning days. And you can also, check in and review the homeschooling environment to foster choice and control where appropriate. This in turn does increase motivation to learn. This might look like offering choice in how the child approaches learning, such as being more hands-on and using blocks for counting or multiplication, listening first and then talking the content out loud before doing worksheets. Maybe it's writing on a whiteboard or watching a video that explains it in a different way. You can also ask your child what they like or what they find difficult about learning and explore their individual experience. And that can be a very insightful conversation, as well as a great way to connect with them and to empower their voice. And so now we'll move into the 3 core strategies that focuses on regulating emotions, increasing emotional awareness, and responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. And these skills are very useful for families because they can be used by both parents and children. With practice, these strategies are great go-tos, which children can identify by themselves by perhaps saying, I need to stop. I need 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I need to use my 5 senses. Or you also, as the parent, can role model naming your emotion and prompting the child to follow along in participating too. And also can be used as a way of co-regulating. And in these cases, role modeling is particularly of importance, as younger children often learn most effectively by observing and imitating adult behaviors. And these next 3 strategies I use in my practice and have found that they form a really strong foundation for emotional regulation and awareness. And they can also be used in many different environments. So the first strategy is the stop skill, which supports emotional regulation by slowing the process down and bringing attention to what is happening in the moment. In busy households, it's very easy to react automatically when something goes wrong. So, for example, this might look like a child refuses to do work or becomes disengaged. Perhaps they're really frustrated with what's happening, or they're feeling anxious about getting something wrong. Perhaps siblings start to argue and there's conflict that's arisen, and it's time to start to de-escalate and to slow that down. So in these cases, and in many more, we can use the stop skill. And so each letter in stop is a step to the strategy. So the first step is to stop and take a step back. So don't act immediately, pause. A lot of the time we go, just freeze. Nothing needs to happen here. Let's stop in our tracks. Then to take a breath. One long, deep breath in, hold it, and out. A lot of times I say like you're blowing through a straw or you're blowing out a candle. So we want to, rather than a, it's actually very different in the way that the breath comes out. And then we want to observe. So what is happening? What am I thinking about? What am I focusing on? What am I reacting to? What am I feeling in my body? So this part, so the observe, and when we go to put in perspective, is a bit more prompting, but after some time, it becomes almost quite natural for the child to start to identify those things without really thinking it through. So it might be, the task is tricky. I don't think I can do it. It's taking longer than I expected. My muscles are really tense. My tummy hurts. Those are some common things that I tend to hear. And so then acknowledging that and going, oh, okay, I can see what's happening. Let's put in some perspective. So think of it like taking the helicopter view. So taking a look from above. Is this fact or opinion? Is there another way of looking at this? How important is this right now? What would I say to a friend about this? So if we go to the I can't do this, what would you say to a friend? Most of the time I would expect you can do it, something like that. Or it might even be, what's going on? Where's the frustration coming from? Is that an opinion about the self? It might be a fact that, yes, this task has taken 20 minutes longer than expected. So perhaps, what do we need to do next? And that's where we might move into proceeding mindfully. What is the best thing to do? Do I have to act now? Can I wait and see? So we want to consider the results of an action and only do what will help the most. So that might be a brain break. Do we need to take some time? Some water? A snack? Do we need to stretch and shake the body out and get some of that energy out? Do we need to apologize to our sibling? Do we just need to not speak to that sibling just for a little while so we can calm down? So what does that look like in the moment? And it's a great way to just step through and to get into a space of mindfulness and to regulate in the moment. And then another powerful strategy is name the emotion. So everyone experiences emotion. It's completely normal. When we as humans are distressed, it can feel like our brain has been hijacked. We can't think straight and the distress feels super intense. And the emotion can be overwhelming. And we might struggle to manage the emotion and respond well to the situation because every emotion carries an urge to act, regardless on if that emotion is positive, negative, or neutral. It can be helpful to slow the process down. So when feeling the emotion, name it first and then decide to do with it before acting on it. This can even look like identifying, I am angry. I want to quit. Okay, well, quitting might not be the most helpful thing. What could we do instead? What about taking a break? What about approaching this differently? So what can we do instead to challenge that urge? The first thing is to name it. So maybe instead, I'll take a break. And additionally, research shows that when we label emotions, the brain begins to process and regulate them. So, for example, instead of this is difficult or stop being difficult, you might say or encourage your child to say to themselves, it seems this task feels frustrating, or I am feeling frustrated right now. When children hear or name emotions, they begin to develop that emotional awareness or continue to develop it. Over time, this helps them recognize and manage their own feelings more effectively. A great motto that pairs well with this strategy is name it to tame it. This acknowledges that emotions are not bad, don't need to be changed, but instead can be managed in a way that is developmentally appropriate for the child's understanding. So name it to tame it. And the final skill that I have listed in our webinar for today is focusing on mindfulness and grounding, which supports emotional regulation and calming the physical signs of overwhelm. The purpose of this strategy is to bring attention to what is happening in the moment and is also great for co-regulation as well. So, when overwhelmed by upsetting thoughts and uncomfortable feelings, we can use the 5 senses to help improve the moment. So I refer to this as the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or 5 senses. So different children will call it different things, but in this case, I've just called it the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Because if there is limited stimuli around, it can also be effective to think of anything that changes the focus of attention. For instance, 5 colors, 4 animals, 3 fruits, and so on. So it involves going through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it'd be 5 things I can see or imagine I can see. 4 things I can hear or imagine I can hear. 3 things I can touch or imagine I can touch. 2 things I can smell or taste or imagine that I can smell or taste. And then 1 deep, slow breath. Simply focusing on breathing and being in the moment here and now before proceeding mindfully. So we've looked at many different strategies to reduce your burnout as a parent, but to also support the child in moderating and getting through potential challenges, as well as 3 core strategies. Now, what happens if these don't help? And how to know if your child is in need of that additional support. So there are common signs displayed by children when they are in need of that additional support, which typically includes persistent anxiety, social withdrawal. This could also look like no longer enjoying things that they once enjoyed. And it's not just a change in interest, but it's a change in the way that they're approaching that activity. Emotional outbursts or shutdowns. So this could look like really big outbursts that are not typical. They last for quite a while. The regulation's not happening. Co-regulation is not helpful, or complete shutdown, emotional withdrawal, and just trying to move forward without actually processing the emotions that have happened or even showing the emotions that might be happening underneath the surface level. Now we've also got changes in sleep and or appetite. So it's normal for a child to maybe have a couple nights here and there of poor sleep, but if it is consistent, then it's worth noting. The same with appetite. So if they have a test or if they have a new experience coming up, they might feel a bit nervous, might not want breakfast, but if it's ongoing, persistent, and notable, then it's definitely worth looking at. And the final one here is a loss of motivation, energy, and or concentration. Like many of the others, this can be normal here or there, but if it is ongoing and to a point of being concerning, then it is definitely worth investigating further. So if you've noticed these signs in your child and hold concern for their well-being, please visit your local GP and or get in contact with us for specialized support. So what does therapeutic support look like? So the strategies shared today are informed by DBT, which is a core modality to my practice. So I use different modalities for different people, and I use a mixed model approach, but DBT is a core component of my practice with others. And it focuses on 4 key areas and provides practical skills, which can be individualized to specific needs. So it focuses on emotional regulation skills, which involves understanding the purpose of emotions, identifying and working with triggers, and learning skills to support, working with heightened emotions. And then to build on emotional regulation is distress tolerance skills, which looks at managing overwhelm, sudden change, intense emotions, meltdowns, and shutdowns. So emotional regulation sets a foundation, whereas distress tolerance is a step up for those really intense, ongoing emotions where the rational brain has completely turned off and emotional mind is activated. Then DBT also focuses on interpersonal effectiveness skills by implementing helpful communication skills to assist with self-expression and understanding others, as well as developing improved self-compassion and self-validation through self-talk skills. And the 4th focus area of DBT is mindfulness, which explores responding thoughtfully rather than reacting impulsively. It increases self-awareness, minimizes judgment and criticism of the self or others. So all of these 4 areas are important aspects of life and aspects of supporting well-being. However, when engaging in therapeutic support, these won't all happen simultaneously. It'll be prioritized based upon the individual's needs. So ultimately, working with a therapist to learn and apply DBT skills can improve emotional well-being and help create positive outcomes for children, adolescents, and adults. If you feel you or your child would benefit from support, don't hesitate to reach out via phone, email, or visit our website. I have listed our information below, but you can also find it on our Facebook page or through Google. So some key takeaways I would like to leave you with today include that homeschooling families invest an enormous amount of care and effort into supporting their children's growth. Homeschooling encompasses strengths, difficulties, challenges, and positive outcomes. And there are strategies which can reduce the risk of parental burnout, mitigate potential challenges, and support emotional regulation and awareness. So I thank you and I appreciate you taking the time to view and engage with this webinar. If you would like to talk further, ask questions, or explore support options, please feel free to contact me via the email address below. So that is cassidy@psychprofessionals.com.au. Thank you so much for joining me, and for those that are participating in the Q&A, I will be ending the recording now.